Welcome to the Wednesday, August 9th Planning Board meeting of the Town of Raymond. The Planning Board will come to order. The board does have a quorum. We have roll call, please.
Patricia Beaton.
Sheila Burke.
Greg Foster.
Bruce Sanford.
Kyle Bancroft.
Ed Kranich.
Danielle Stumper.
This is a public proceeding, and unless the board specifically votes to go into executive session, you have the right to hear everything that is being said and to look at all of the exhibits that are being presented. Please notify the chairman if you are unable to hear or to see. The board works from a published agenda and will be considering tonight's items in the following order. We have call to order. We have consideration of the minutes of the last meeting from July 12th. New business application Jeff Doobie for a minor subdivision single lot amendment, and an application sketch plan consideration for Constantine Scrivanos for relocation of the Dunkin' Donuts, followed by planner communications and adjournment. In each instance, the burden is upon the applicant to demonstrate compliance with the provisions of the applicable ordinances. After the board votes on the merits of each project application, it will prepare a written notice of decision. Generally speaking, appeals must be filed with the Superior Court within 30 days of this board's decision. Also, to be certain that you preserve your individual rights to file any such appeal, you must be certain that this board's record evidences your participation this evening. All persons speaking, including representatives of the applicant and members of the public, are asked to stand, state their name, address, and affiliation with the project, if any, and please go to the microphone up by the lectern up there and speak slowly and distinctly so that everybody in the room can have the benefit of hearing what you have to say. You must sign the sign-in sheet if you are speaking tonight. We don't seem to do that, but that is in the opening remarks, so maybe we should be a little bit more circumspect about people addressing us signing the sign-in sheet. All persons speaking shall address the chairman. The first item for consideration is the minutes from July 12, 2017.
Move we accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
For discussion, there is one thing that I wanted to bring up that I thought might be worthwhile of putting into the minutes. At the last meeting, we had the, find my note on that. Not Constantine Scrivanos. It was the application, help me out here, Chris. It was the one on the road extension that had the curve in it that was not in place yet.
Nichols Drive.
Yeah, Cassie Steinlost.
Yes.
Yeah, that application, Sheila Burke raised the concern that the existing road, she would not possibly look favorably on a waiver against computations of runoff and phosphorus issues, and after hearing her concern, I asked the code enforcement officer whether the portion of the road that was shown on the plan between roughly Station 2 and a little bit beyond Station 3 was already constructed, curved as shown, or whether it was straight. And the code enforcement officer indicated that it was straight and then that curved portion was not constructed yet. After hearing that, it was quite clear that a substantial portion of the existing road was going to be chopped up, moved, relocated, have a lot of work done. And at that point, I agreed with Sheila that I think that, not speaking for the entire board, but that granting a waiver against phosphorus and runoff issues might be difficult and may not be looked on favorably. And I think that that needs to be inserted into the minutes so that we're quite clear that that issue was raised and discussed when this issue, if it comes back before us. Any discussion on that? Does anybody wish to make a motion that we amend the minutes to that effect? If not, I'll also move.
Yeah, why don't you move your motion, because I'm not quite sure what we're doing here.
Okay, I move that we
your
amend the minutes to include the discussion from Sheila Burke about her concern of granting a waiver on the existing portion of the road for the computation of phosphorus and runoff, and the fact that the code enforcement officer did corroborate that the portion of the road from Station 2 to a little beyond Station 3 on the plan that is shown curved is in fact currently straight, and that that straight portion must be ripped out and reconstructed to show the curved portion that's on the plan, and that there seemed to be some concern among several members of the board that granting a waiver for phosphorus and runoff based upon that might be an issue. That's my motion.
Mr. Chairman, correct me if I'm wrong, but that application was withdrawn, was it not? Until they could,
It's,
The site-
it's
site
been,
visit
the
was-
site visit was postponed. They have
Correct.
not asked to remove their application.
okay. So technically, we still have not approved that application.
Correct.
We expressed our concerns to the applicant. I suppose the minutes could reflect that the, much more simply that the planning board expressed a concern regarding erosion and phosphorus waiver
For the
And-
existing road, yeah.
for the existing road. And the applicant was going to go back a little bit to the drawing board. I thought we discussed a little bit about point systems, et cetera. So
Yeah,
I
the
would make it a little
possibility
bit
of using that, right.
simpler. I would move that the record reflect that I had a concern regarding phosphorus and erosion control planning, given the scope of the road revision brought forth by the applicant, and just leave it that simple.
Okay.
I think that-
my
Okay.
Because there was a discussion.
Did you have that, Mary?
There was a discussion.
Yes,
Right.
I remember the
Yeah.
discussion, I'm just trying to catch all of that.
Right. That I,
Go back to the video.
okay.
I think you just even keep it simpler than that, just say the planning board expressed concerns about erosion control and phosphorus export with the redesign.
Along the existing
Right.
road, yeah.
yeah.
I'm
Just
assuming
leave
that's
it that,
why.
because
And I don't
you
even
haven't-
think we need a motion, I just think we need to add that to the minutes.
And you haven't deemed it complete yet, right?
Right, correct. So we still have another go-around on that. So if the record could reflect that we expressed a concern about that phosphorus and erosion control waiver, and future discussions will be held.
Okay. We're second to that motion?
I don't even think we need a motion, we're just amending the
amend- just amend
record to
this.
reflect that. It really
Just
wasn't
amend.
a motion.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah?
Okay, then we have a
Yeah.
motion that's been seconded for the minutes of the meeting with the addition of the note regarding our concern about phosphorus and runoff control on the existing road portion. Any further discussion? To have a vote on the minutes? All in favor? Opposed? The approval of the minutes has been taken care of. New business, we have an applicant, Jeff Doobie, 49 Tenny Hill Road, for a minor subdivision single lot amendment. We have paperwork on that with some procedural history and background. I'd like to turn this over to the town planner and have him fill us in on his technical reviews and recommendations. And I'm sorry. No, we'll go back and we'll have Jeff Doobie and his engineer, or representative, present the plan to us, and then we'll go to the town planner.
Jeff Doobie, to my left, and I'm Wayne Wood, the surveyor on the project. I didn't bring a display to put up. I thought it was fairly simple. It was, the amendment is to simply correct the title issue that was created by selling off a lot without the benefit of the approval of an amendment to the plan. So here we are to get that approved. It's an existing house sits on the lot. It's on Tenny Hill Road, part of an amendment that's been done in the past. We're not doing anything other than creating the lot that was intended to have been there originally around the lot, around the house, so that it can clear up the title issues and move on to sell the parcel with the house on it. And the house has been there for a while.
Yeah, first I'd like to thank you guys for considering my application tonight. And in the simplest form, the reason I'm here today is to ask for your help. My wife and I bought a property up here in Raymond, and we're at the point now where we're held hostage in our own house. We can't get out of it. We can't sell it. We can't even get approved to make changes to our house if we wanted to. We want to add a deck or a garage. Technically, it's an illegal lot. This all came about, a few months ago when we decided to sell our house. Some background how we got ourselves in this situation. I don't know how much you guys need to know about this, but kind of, feel us out for a minute. My wife and I bought a house, 49 Tenny Hill Road. The specifications of it is map 18, lot 28A, which came with 7.22 acres. We were thrilled to have 7.22 acres moving out from Philadelphia. That land was very valuable to us, so we decided to pay full asking price for it. A lot of people stamped approval on this transaction. This went across a lot of people's desk. A lot of real estate agents. You're talking, the mortgage, the appraisal, the title company, the title insurance company. It went across a lot of people's desks. Everyone took a piece of the pie and stamped approve and slid on down the line. 6 to 8 months into owning the property, I'm walking the property and I said, this doesn't feel like 7.22 acres. Come to find out, to make a long story short, we got sold 7.22 acres, which we've been paying taxes on 7.22 acres, but our deed only explains 3. So it's been a mess. And it's been put a lot of pressure on my wife and I to figure this mess out. And we have lawyers involved to figure out that end, to who's liable for those mistakes. What we're simply asking you tonight is to make this lot legal so that we can sell it and move on with our life. Just imagine buying a house with 7.22, you have to sell it for 3. And we thought we could do that. We thought we could. We thought if we just put our house on the market, eat that 4.21 acres that we lost and sell it for the 3 acres we had. We listed the house April 1st, found a buyer right away. Things were going good up to closing. We're getting ready to close. I get a call from the town of Raymond. Kurt LaBelle's on the phone. He said, "We have a problem here." I said, "What's the problem?" He says, "Your house, your property is technically illegal because the subdivision plan says it has to be 7.22. And that's why we're here. We're here to hopefully fix that in its simplest form. Hopefully we provided you with the tax maps and deeds and everything you need to do to make this, or help us right this wrong. So that's why we're here tonight.
Just for the record, you are Jeff Doobie, correct?
Yes, I am Jeff
Yeah,
Doobie.
please state your name and address so
Sure.
we get that in the record.
Yep, Jeff Doobie, 49 Tenny Hill Road, Raymond, Maine.
Thank you.
Yep.
Does anyone have any questions of either Mr. Wood or Mr. Doobie about what they presented so far?
That was very thorough.
It was very clear.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, might I suggest that for the record, we just quickly go through the subdivision review criteria so that that's all on the record, and then move into the technical review and how we're going to handle moving forward?
The subdivision review, is that something we do, or is that something the town planner does as part of his?
We have his recommendation, but normally, it's my understanding for the record, we should just go through these criteria fairly quickly. I think they're very straightforward. There are no presenting problems in them. So I think we can make this very quick.
Okay.
So you guys can sit down.
If I could, Mr. Chair, it may be beneficial. There were 7 items in the technical review, and I believe they've addressed those, so it may be beneficial to have Mr. Wood quickly go through those, and if those are actually complete, then we can really fly through the rest of those
Okay.
criteria. Do you have that, Wayne?
I have that list. Let me get something to reference here. In your technical review, you had, as you say, 7 notes. One was number 1, the planning board will need to amend the actual subdivision recording plan note that the amendment is for the benefit of 1A only. Well, my note number 8, I think, covered that already, that it's listed where the plan revision is and where to find it and what it is, that what we're amending. It may not say it in exactly the same words that you did, but that one seemed to cover it from my perspective. Road right-of-way on Tenny Hill Road I have revised those and I sent them over to Jim today anyway to confirm that I ought to be bringing a Mylar for signatures, that I have added the width of Tenny Hill Road and shown the other side of the right-of-way on the plan. And that was number 2. Number 3, the turnaround at the end of the Lot 2 right-of-way that was on the original amendment that was done, that has been added to the plan to reflect that it's correct in its nature. The plan should show a pin to be set on the southeasterly corner of Lot 1A. The pin is now on the plan. the number 5, the right-of-way across the property of Randy Robinson has no relevancy to the original subdivision, and he had suggested we remove it from the plan, and a spelling error. I fixed the spelling error in Robinson's name. My comment back to him was that this right-of-way does exist. It's shown on the tax maps and the deeds. This is where it is, irregardless of whether it's technically relevant or not. It's accurate for the purposes of what the plan is depicting of the abutting properties and what's there. Number 6 is special note stating this plan amends Lot 1. I think his number 1 and 6 go together as far as the amendment part of it, of which my note number 8, I believe, covers all of that. And number 7, the final plan should be signed by the professional surveyor. The versions that you got were signed. The electronic version is not, of course, but obviously it's signed for the Mylar and everything tonight, so.
Right.
That goes through that. That, I think, covers his 7 questions.
For the planning board, the only reason that I questioned the right-of-way is that sometimes when we approve a plan and we have a right-of-way on there, that right-of-way becomes official, and we don't know the whole status of that right-of-way.
Right.
I mean, I'm okay with it because there is no bearings or distances or anything. It's just, I guess it's just location at this point.
Right, and it could, maybe it's not 100% accurate, and it could create problems later if it's recorded on this amended subdivision plan?
That was
Is that
my
what we're?
only, that was my concern, so.
I would look at that no differently than the one we show on the old Lot 2, even though that's been through an approval process, surveyed out and everything else. It's on this plan in graphic representation only. It's not dimensioned or anything else, the same as this one is not for that purpose.
And again, the reason I asked for that one was that was part of the subdivision and part of a past approval on the subdivision. The other one on the Robinsons is not affiliated with the subdivision. So again, it's your discretion what you feel is comfortable.
Could we make a note on the plan regarding that right-of-way to clarify that it is just for representative purposes only? That would allow us to stick with the current drawing, at the same time not create a official decision as we move forward. Would that work?
That works for me.
Okay, would you be amenable to just adding that note?
We can certainly do that, I mean, to speed this thing along. I mean,
Yeah, just that one simple
the
note.
line type and the way it's shown on here is the same as the abutting lot lines in ownership anyway. It's not intended to be anything that would indicate anything other than graphically there's something there. Just like your abutting property lines are, it's the same line type that we're using on all of them. So, I mean, if you want to know, we can certainly add something in there, but I don't know.
I don't think it hurts. I think
Yeah,
it just clarifies it.
yeah. We're talking 10 years from now when somebody on lot 2 and 2B come before us or something else, right?
Sure.
So it's just a simple request, just that one note that it's representative, not.
Yep. So, and so with that, I have no objections to the other 6 items. I think
Okay.
you've addressed those adequately, so I think now we can go through, or you can go through.
Quickly through the subdivision criteria.
Subdivision review criteria. And it's onerous. You may just want to, you can either do it in one fell swoop, or you can do it item by item. It may be easier to just do it. In this case, because it's an amended plan, many of them aren't totally applicable.
Let me read through these. I don't know if it's necessary to read every single word on the pages, but subdivision review criteria pursuant to the Town of Raven Subdivision Regulations, Article 1, Purpose and Review Criteria. The following subdivision regulations must be met in order for the project to be improved. Number A, will not result in undue water or air pollution. In making this determination, the planning board shall at least consider elevation of the land and its relation to floodplains, nature of soils and subsoil and their ability to adequately support waste disposal, slope of the land and its effects on effluents, and the applicable state and local health and water resource regulations. The applicant has provided a subdivision plan which provided notes stating there are no wetlands or floodplains on the parcel. They included in the application the original HHE 200 form and estimated the location of the septic system. And the town planner feels that for the purposes of this amendment to Lot 1A, the information provided meets the approval criteria. Item B has sufficient water available for the reasonably foreseeable needs of the subdivision based on the home already existing with evidence of a well existing without known issues of capacity, quality, or supply. There is sufficient evidence the amended subdivision meets this approval criteria. Item C will not cause an unreasonable burden on an existing water supply if one is to be utilized. Suitable domestic well locations have been provided on the plan attached and are shown that there is adequate separation from existing and proposed subsurface wastewater systems. Based on the size of the remaining lot and previous plans, we feel there is adequate soils to accommodate the remaining lot 1. Therefore, the criteria has been met. Item D will not cause unreasonable soil erosion or reduction in the capacity of the land to hold water so that a dangerous or unhealthy condition may result. The lot exists as a developed single-family home and has no issues with erosion. Therefore, the requirement appears to be met. E will not cause unreasonable highway or public road congestion or unsafe conditions with respect to the use of highways or public roads existing or proposed. Again, the lot exists as a developed single-family home. There are no issues with the existing driveway, and Lot 1 has adequate frontage and location for a driveway. Therefore, the requirement would seem to not be applicable and meets the criteria. Item F will provide for adequate solid and sewage waste disposal. The lot exists as a developed single-family home, and there are no issues with solid and sewage waste, so the requirement is not applicable and appears to meet the criteria. Item G will not cause an unreasonable burden on the ability of the town of Raymond to dispose of solid waste and sewage with respect to the use of municipal facilities existing or proposed. Again, it's an existing lot, and proposed amendment could provide an additional lot for legal development. The adding of one new lot with a 3-bedroom single-family home would not unreasonably burden the town's solid waste facilities or services. Sewage waste is to be removed at the homeowner's responsibility by a private contractor. There is evidence the amended subdivision meets this approval criteria. Item H will not place an unreasonable burden on the ability of the town of Raymond to provide municipal or governmental services. This development will have no impact on municipal or government services due to its small size and lack of impact. There is evidence that the subdivision meets the approval criteria. Item I will not have an undue adverse effect on the scenic or natural beauty of the area, aesthetics, historic sites, significant wildlife habitat identified by the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife or the town of Raymond, or rare and irreplaceable natural areas or any public rights for physical or visual access to the shoreline. The lot was previously divided and met the above criteria without restriction or reservation, and so based on previous approval findings and records, the additional lot created will meet the criteria. Item J is in conformance with the subdivision ordinance, comprehensive plan, zoning ordinance, floodplain management ordinance, or other duly adopted town ordinances or regulations. In making this determination, the municipal review authority may interpret these ordinances and plans. Upon completion of all conditions of approval by the planning board, there is adequate evidence that the proposed amendment subdivision plan application meets this approval criteria. Item K, the subdivider has adequate financial and technical capacity to meet the required standards. Based on the home already existing and the owner is trying to correct a known title issue for the sale of the lot, we feel this is not applicable and therefore it meets the approval criteria. Item L, whenever situated entirely or partially within a watershed of any pond or lake or within 250 feet of any wetland, great pond, or river as defined in the Mandatory Shoreland Zoning Act, Title 38, Chapter 3, Subchapter 1, Article 2B, the proposed subdivision will not adversely affect the quality of water or unreasonably affect the shoreline of that body of water. Subparagraph 1, to avoid circumventing the intent of this provision, if a proposed subdivision adjoins a shoreland strip narrower than 250 feet, which is not lotted, the proposed subdivision shall be reviewed as if lot lines extend to the shore. Subparagraph 2, the frontage and setback provisions of this paragraph do not apply either within areas zoned as general development or its equivalent under shoreland zoning, Title 38, Chapter 3, Subchapter 1, Article 2B, or within areas designated by ordinance as densely developed. The determination of which areas are densely developed must be based on a finding that existing development met the definitional requirements of Section 4401, subsection 1 on September 23, 1983. The finding that the proposed amended subdivision is further than 250 feet from any watershed, pond, or wetland as shown on the town's official shoreland zoning map, and the requirement does not apply. Therefore, the approval criteria are met. Item M, will not alone or in conjunction with existing activities adversely affect the quality or quantity of groundwater and aquifers. Since the project has an existing septic system, approval by a licensed site evaluator for the single-family home subsurface wastewater designs with adequate well separation meeting the state plumbing code, and that the site is not in a mapped aquifer, the activity has very little impact on groundwater. This criteria item for approval has been met. Item N, based on the Federal Emergency Management Agency's flood boundary and floodway maps and flood insurance rate maps and information presented by the applicant whether the subdivision is in a flood-prone area. If the subdivision or any part of it is in such an area, the subdivider shall determine the 100-year flood elevation and flood hazard boundaries within the subdivision. The proposed subdivision plan must include a condition of plan approval requiring that principal structures in the subdivision will be constructed with their lowest floor, including the basement, at least 1 foot above the 100-year flood elevation. The property is not located in a 100-year flood plain by evidence of an FIRM map, and therefore the approval criteria is met. Item O, all freshwater wetlands within the proposed subdivision have been identified on any map submitted as part of the application, regardless of the size of these wetlands. Finding is the applicant has provided a note stating the amended lot created with the amended subdivision plan does not contain wetlands. The information provided meets the approval criteria. Item P, any river, stream, or brook as defined in the Natural Resources Protection Act, Title 38, Section 480B, within or abutting the subdivision has been identified on any map submitted as part of the application. Finding is that there is no formal stream, brook, or river near the property of the developed site. Therefore, the information provided meets the approval criteria. Item Q, the subdivision shall provide for adequate stormwater management, with a finding due to the lack of internal street infrastructure and that the subdivision was previously approved by the Planning Board and that it is not located in the shoreland zone or in proximity to a sensitive water body, and that the remaining lot consists of substantial acreage. We feel the applicant is not required to provide stormwater management for the single-family home, and the approval criteria are met. Item R, if any lots in the proposed subdivision have shore frontage on a river, stream, brook, or great pond as defined in Title 38, Section 480B, none of the lots created within the subdivision have a lot depth to shore frontage ratio greater than 5:1. This does not apply as the development does not have shore frontage, thereby the plan meets the approval criteria. Item S, the long-term cumulative effects of the proposed subdivision will not unreasonably increase the Great Pond's phosphorus concentration during the construction phase and life of the proposed subdivision. Due to the lack of internal street infrastructure and the lot has already been constructed as a single-family lot, the approval criteria is met. And item T, for any proposed subdivision that crosses municipal boundaries, the proposed subdivision will not cause unreasonable traffic congestions or be unsafe with respect to the use of existing public ways in an adjoining municipality in which part of the subdivision is located. The property does not contain any land in the abutting town and as such does not create any unreasonable traffic or unsafe traffic movements, and as such due to its existence meets the approval criteria. The Planning Board may require the following conditions shall be complied with for the approval of the amended subdivision plan applications. Conditions must be completed in order for the project to be in compliance with the Town of Raymond Land Use Ordinance requirements, and that one condition which we may add to or may not add to after board discussions are the final plan shall address the above mentioned items for the planner's technical review to the satisfaction of the planner and code enforcement officer, and provide a Mylar and 2 original paper copies for the planning board to sign. Proof of the plan being recorded shall be presented to the town within 60 days of the plan being signed by the planning board, unless an extension is requested. It doesn't appear to be anything in the subdivision review criteria that the application does not meet. Jim, do you want to go through any technical recommendations that you got in your report to us on this?
I think we've covered
Well,
those.
we've covered that initially with 7 items, and now you're down to 1, which is just a note to clarify the delineation of the right-of-way on the abutters property.
So I think at this stage, we're ready for a motion regarding approval, subject to the conditions that we've outlined in the previous, prior to all of that.
Before you make your motion, let me ask one question. Does the planning board have any, I mean, it's not our purpose to pass legal review on the title process, but are we in any way exposing the town to any issues by amending a subdivision plan that has a lot on it that technically is an illegal lot and that the owner cannot close title on? I'm wondering if we need to, before we sign the final Mylars for the change of the subdivision plan, if we need to get proof from the owner that the title has been cleared to him.
It can't be.
You can't
You can't get that
And we
till we make the
did have a
lot
brief
legal.
discussion with legal on this, and their suggestion is to do exactly what we're doing. You know, somehow, somewhere along the line, the town did issue a building permit for this. So in some regards, we're correcting some of our own faults here. So this is the easiest way to correct the title and any other past issues going forward. And clearly, with it being now 3 acres, unfortunately, 4.22 acres, you know, is gone from what they thought they originally had. But that's not our issue. Our issue is to correctly divide this out of Lot 1. And as such, we're doing it with an amended subdivision plan.
And once we do that, then obviously he can get
Once
his
we do
title.
this, his title will be cleared. Once he records this, he'll give proof of that to his title company, and he'll be free to sell or purchase or whatever he needs to do at this point.
And both of the lots that are created in this division
Right.
will meet the minimum standards of the bulk and space standards of the town of Raymond.
And it's, and another complex issue here is the remaining property is tied up with liens and tax issues and things like that. So he is on an island at this point. So the only recourse we have is to do it this way.
Okay. You want to proceed with your motion, Sharon?
Yes. I move that the plan board, let's see, should we accept the application as complete? Or should we, how would we phrase the
Well,
amendment?
the first thing you should do is accept it as complete, and then ask if there's any public comment,
Correct.
and then
So
proceed to do your final motion.
Okay, so I move that the plan board accept this application as complete.
Second.
Question there, what about the showing of the right-of-way that was discussed?
That's
Should that be part of the motion?
That's going to be next when we
Right.
do the approval.
That
of
wouldn't
the-
hold it up from being a complete
That'll
application.
be a condition.
That'll be a
Yes.
condition.
Okay, all right.
If and when we get to the approval after public comment.
Okay, we have a motion that the application is complete, and it has been seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Now we ask for public discussion.
Yeah. Anybody in the audience like to speak? Any public discussion of this issue? Hearing none, we will close the public discussion of the issue. Now, for amendments, we need to discuss amendments. The right-of-way, is that the only amendment that
No,
we
we
are?
have eight.
There's 8, but they've been addressed, so
They've been
technically, we don't need to, I mean, they were in the memo, they've been addressed, you don't need to include them now. The only one we need to include is the one with regards to the right-of-way as shown on the abutters property.
Correct.
So there's only one condition now.
Okay. You want to make a motion about that condition?
part of your motion.
I move that the final plan shall be amended to reflect the right-of-way is, how should we put it?
You want me to?
Yeah, could you,
I just said a note needs to be added to the plan to clarify delineation of the right-of-way on the abutters property.
so moved.
Mr. Chairman, I'm thinking that a note that says the right-of-way across the Robinson property is shown for graphic representation only,
Yes, that would be
Correct.
fine.
as simple as that, and call
As
it
simple
quits.
as that,
Yep.
as simple as that.
Sure.
And I
So-
second that.
So we made a motion, properly seconded.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That passes.
And what we can do, Wayne, is as soon as you add that note, you can bring it to the town, and we'll see if we can get the board members to come in and
Run by and sign it
Run
at the
by and
town
sign it.
office.
You give me about 5 minutes and it can be on there.
you can do that too.
You can do that too? We'll
It's
do it
that
before we
short.
leave
Okay.
tonight. So we're
Okay?
done.
Thank you
You're
for your
all
time.
set. You're all set.
All right, thank you.
You're gonna be set in a few minutes.
Sorry that happened.
Sorry about
So what happens now? How do I?
What happens now is that he will add a note to the plan that we just discussed, and then the board will sign that. And then somebody will pick that up tomorrow or whenever.
When you can come pick it up if all fees are paid there.
Right.
Yep.
And then you can take that to the Registry of Deeds and record it. And then copies have to be given to the town as well. Wayne can help you with all that. But effectively, you have approval of your lot.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
So you're all set.
Thank you. Test my hand draft.
That's okay.
Works for me.
Next item, the agenda, we have an application sketch plan. The applicant is Constantine Scrivanos. The project is relocation of Dunkin' Donuts. We have the,
Mr. Chair, I'll have to recuse myself from this one as Sebago Technics is representing.
recusal, okay.
Yeah.
So the draft you have for a memo is from Will Haskell from Will Palmer. He had a conflict tonight, so he couldn't be here, but he'll be here for the next meeting for sure.
Okay, do we have his memo?
You should have it included in your packet.
Jeff,
Don't, I have an
you
extra
don't
one
need to
here.
stay. You can get out.
And I would recommend that you have Owens make his presentation. This is for sketch plan. He's just looking for feedback from the board.
Okay. Owens, would you like to state your name and where you're from? And thank you. Tell us a little bit about the project, please.
Certainly. Good evening, and thank you for hearing us tonight. My name is Owens McCullough. I'm a civil engineer with Sebago Technics here tonight on behalf of Constantine Scrivanos. He goes as Gus Scrivanos. With me also is George DeLagus, who really serves three hats for Gus. He's the architect, construction management, and his representative. Tell you a little bit about background on Mr. Scrivanos. Is he owns about 120 Dunkin' Donuts throughout New England. I worked with him on the one up in Naples that you may have driven by that was built in 2014. He owns the one in Wyndham, over in Standish, numerous ones throughout the area, Massachusetts, New Hampshire area. Gus is looking, he actually operates and owns the one that is located literally a couple hundred yards down the street from the proposed site. That's on leased land, and he's looking to construct a new building on his own property that they would own, manage, and take care of. What we're proposing is, as you can see up on the board, the site is about a 3/4 acre site right here with frontage along Route 302. This is the car wash to the north and what used to be the Aubergine Hardware to the south. The current parcel is a single-family residence. It's about 3/4 of an acre located in the commercial zone, public water along the frontage. They've entered into a purchase and sale agreement, which was included in your packet. The owner had a very short due diligence period, and actually we we're appreciate the help with the town to get here early on because the owner is requiring them to close by August 15th of this month. And actually, they wanted them to close earlier than that. We asked for an extension so we could at least get some feedback from the planning board. So I wanted to take a few minutes to walk you through this. We're here tonight really to sketch plan to get some general feedback from you. Will Haskell completed a real cursory review because all the detailed design plans haven't been done yet, but we're in the process of actually preparing those. So I'll talk to you a little bit about the site. Again, the site is about 3/4 of an acre. It's fairly narrow, rectangular in shape. The existing home on it would be removed in its entirety with the new Dunkin' Donuts constructed on the property. As with any Dunkin' Donuts, the drive-through is probably the most important aspect of circulation in it. In fact, we've actually filed for a Maine DOT traffic movement permit that's required for any establishment or operation that creates more than 100 trip-ins in the peak hour, a trip-in being identified as one vehicle coming in or one vehicle leaving. Dunkin' Donuts generates about 200 in the peak hour. So we have filed for that. Chris has a copy of it. We're waiting for the DOT to establish what they call a pre-application meeting, scoping meeting, where they'll take the information we submitted, which is all the traffic counts, accident data, everything along the site distance and all of that. We'll be working through that process. Generally, on the traffic movement permit, if you're familiar with the Naples Dunkin' Donuts, they're really looking for a couple things on these traffic movement permits. One is that you have plenty of stacking and queuing for vehicles coming into the site. And in this case, we're going to set it up so it goes around the perimeter of the site. We find that works much better than if you've been through some Dunkin' Donuts where the drive-through goes through the parking lot and then folks can't get in and out of the parking spaces. We try to avoid those with new designs whenever we can. So in this case, it'll be a one-way drive-through around, and it'll stack 20 cars or more along there. The other thing that the DOT often looks for is they want to make sure you have good sight distance. This section of Route 302 is pretty nice because it's straight and pretty flat, so you have good visibility. Generally, a Dunkin' Donuts facility generates the need for a left turn lane coming in. So if you were going south on Route 302 and you wanted to make a left turn into the Dunkin' Donuts, in other words, across the northbound lane, the amount of turning movements requires that turn lane. By comparison, up in Naples, if you'd been by that one, we constructed one up there. In this location, there's already a center lane, turn lane in this area, so that meets that requirement, so we don't really expect we'll have to do anything with that area in there since it already exists, so we're fortunate in that aspect of it. The project, I'm just going to run through a few things that in the application letter that I had submitted. So one of the things we look at when we design these sites too is to get a tractor-trailer truck into the site and back out of the site. A lot of times you see the Dunkin' Donuts sites, they're on small parcels. So the only way we can get the tractor trailer in, and I've already provided some turning movements, I think the Will Haskell, but what we'll do is when a tractor trailer comes in, they'll have to make the turn inside the parking area. They usually come in at 5 a.m. in the morning. Dunkin' Donuts can schedule those deliveries so it's off peak time so that they have the parking lot to use. So within this area, the only way that works is if we basically stripe and leave the area open so that it serves as parking based on striping delineation. But during the early morning hours when there's nobody there, it provides the access needed for the truck deliveries in and out of the site. A truck cannot make this maneuver around the drive-through, only the passenger vehicles for the site. I'll talk about the building here in a minute. The construction of the building, one of the things that happens, Dunkin' Donuts has basically a prototypical building that they like to use. Raymond has an architectural standard along the Route 1 area. You have it in your ordinance, which allows George the ability to go to Dunkin' Donuts and say, geez, we've got to build something outside of your normal, typical flat roof box type kind of Dunkin' Donuts. It's the trademark building. And what we're proposing is you'll see a building, not unlike the building you saw in Naples where they have it a similar base. So you have peaked roofs, shingled roofs, looks more like a residential style, and some dormers on it, and allows much more of an architectural change and look to it than the typical. And that is what we're proposing here, and I'll flip the board here in a minute once I get through everything else. The site is located in the commercial zone, which allows for this type of use. We've completed a topographical survey. A prior boundary survey was already done on the property. That was all included in the application. The property has no wetlands on it. It's fairly flat. The residential area, with the exception of towards the back here, which we're not touching. There's a fairly steep slope in the back of the property. If you look at the topo that's included, the lines get close together. It's a pretty steep slope. We are staying completely out of that and developing in the front half. So our entire development is about half an acre of land area that gets to, well, maybe a third of an acre of land area, with the rest staying wooded and vegetated, and we're staying away from that slope. The pond or the kettle hole down below actually has a 75-foot natural resource setback. We're about 100 feet from that, so we're outside of all of that. So we'll be developing up on the plateau portion of the site. So as a result, because of the small size of it, the fact that there are no wetlands on it, we don't have any DEP, Army Corps permitting, anything like that you might find with a much larger parcel of land. We will be installing public water into the site. The abutting properties, we've checked with the water district. The 16-inch water main runs along the site, and we're pretty lucky because when you look at the water district maps, that water main runs and has a jog that comes right along the front of our property on our side of the road. So it makes it nice that we don't have to actually go across the street to tap into the water line. There is no sewer in this area, so we have to go with a septic system on the site. We've already excavated test pits. Gary Fullerton, our site evaluator and soil scientist, has been up on site. The soils are all well-trained sands and gravels up there, as a lot of Raymond is. So we have very good soils for that condition. The septic system is probably going to be what they call a soil air system, where we actually introduce air into it, because the BOD coming out of, because of the type of restaurant it is, we like to de-intensify the wastewater when it goes into the septic field. So we'll have a little bit more of a sophisticated system than a standard septic, but that system is going to go in under the pavement up into this area here. The other thing that we will be doing is collecting all the surface water drainage and putting it into an underground stormwater detention and stormwater treatment system, so that we meet, although we're not filing for it with the DEP, we are going to meet the DEP Chapter 500 regulations for water quality. So that system is under design, and we will be addressing stormwater that way. Lighting on the site will be some pole-mounted lighting and LEDs. The next submittal you will see, Swaney Lighting, who we consult with, has provided photometrics and lighting recommendations for that. Cutoff lighting, so that the lighting lights only the parking lot. It doesn't have the sky glow or bleed over onto adjacent properties. So that will be showing up on the next submittal. One thing that we do need to talk with the planning board about tonight, and I've met with Chris on this, is in the commercial zone, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, there are no building setbacks along the sidelines or the property lines, but there is some requirements around pavement setbacks on it. And under your zoning ordinance, the pavement setback for a side yard, and I'm going to look at Chris to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it is 15 feet on the side yard, 10 or 15 feet. In order to make this site work so that we have that separated drive-through and get the required parking we need for employees and customers, we need to consume pretty much all of the width of the lot. I believe your ordinance allows with waiver from the planning board to go down to 5 feet on the side yards. Chris is looking, so make sure I've got that right.
Right.
Am I doing all right so far?
Yep.
Okay. You can kick me under the table if I got it wrong. So, and that's based on the fact that if it says in the ordinance, if there's pavement and parking and circulation areas on each side of your lot, and literally there is on this parcel. The car wash facility comes up within 5 feet of the property line. The Aubuchon comes up to within 10 feet or so of the property line. So what we are proposing is to keep 5 feet to the edge of the pavement on this side and 10 feet on this side. Now this side will require a retaining wall. If you walk out on the side, or if you looked into the site from the road, the site kind of goes like this and then back up a little bit, almost like a little belly in the site, and to the back, and then it drops off. So in order for us to have the grades that are conducive for safe access and movement in the site, we do end up with a retaining wall down along this side of the property line. So what we are proposing is to have a retaining wall set down here, and that retaining wall is about 6 or 7 feet off the property line. The curbing will then be 10 feet off the property line, allowing for a 3 to 4 foot area to plant shrubbery along the edge here at the top of the wall. We are also proposing in this area here a small green strip of about 5 feet in here that we can plant with landscaping. And then on the outside here, there is an existing stockade fence that is actually on the abutting property. And if you go out there and look on the site, the property from where the stockade fence, it drops down a little bit into our site. So there'll still be a little bit of a slope that'll drop down. We'll still be 3 or 4 feet down lower than the adjacent property. And then there's the stockade fence along the front, along the side. On this side, we are keeping, like I said, so and it's mostly for construction access. This retaining wall will be one of those modular block walls with the geotextile in the wall. We wanted to provide a little bit of room from the edge of the property line back to the face of the wall for construction and maintenance. Allow for a small planting strip on the top in this area here. When we ran the truck turning movements, we were able to, it's really hard to hold these steady. When we, that tree right there, we were able to get the truck around and have a small island to put a shade tree in that location. These other curbs down here will be concrete rollover curbs. Now, I don't know if you've seen those, but they provide delineation and separation from the drive-through aisle, a physical barrier, but you can drive up over them. You're going to know it when you drive up over them, but you can drive up over them. So it's a safety precaution so that vehicles have that visual cue, but if a truck comes in or somebody cuts that corner, they're not going to shred their tires or something on a curb. Over here, we are able to get a few shade trees in this location, and then along the front, we have about a 10-foot area here that we will be planting a combination of some trees, low shrubbery, and some perennials in that location. the front of the building. There will be a sidewalk here. One of Will's comments, and Will Haskell, will be your town planner on this project, is asked about the potential of a sidewalk coming into the site, because you do have sidewalks along this section of Raymond. We're not opposed to that, but what it does mean is instead of the wall, I was able to move the wall in a little bit. I'd have to extend the wall out a little bit more, and the pavement would come a little closer to the property line just to get that short section of sidewalk into it. So we're not opposed to doing that. We just want to make sure everybody understands, and then it would come over here, and then we would allow a crosswalk over to the entrance. It's entirely possible people would walk to the Dunkin' Donuts down here, so we certainly are not opposed to doing that at all. So tonight, what we were hoping to do was get a little feedback from the planning board, a general sense on your willingness for the pavement waiver. Frankly, if we can't get the pavement waiver, if we don't think that, we think this makes perfect sense given the location, the configuration of the parcel, what we need to do for circulation. But if that is something that's agreeable, we'd like to get a general sense from the planning board tonight. We know you can't act on it because we don't have a formal application in front of you, but we are being pressed very diligently by the landowner to sell this property. And Dunkin' Donuts has to make a decision here in the next few days of whether to take the risk and go forward with it. But that's why we were getting here tonight, to get some general feedback. We're trying to do this in a thoughtful, well-planned, addressing drainage, lighting, traffic with the TMP already filed, everything we can possibly try to do to make a safe and productive site. So let me flip over the board here for the elevations. George, would you like to talk about the building?
Yeah, basically,
You have to come up here.
Yeah, please step up to the microphone and state your name and address, and then...
George DeLagus, architect, construction manager, and owner representative, 3 Plough Ave, North Reading, Massachusetts. Basically, the building is, as Owens mentioned, it looks like a house. It looks like a one-story house and has asphalt or fiberglass shingles and siding. It also has punched windows similar to what a house would have. And and again, it's almost identical to what we built in Naples, where I was also the architect on that. This building is about 500 square feet smaller. That project is about 2,500 square feet. This one is about 2,000. Part of the reason is because the lot is small, and we just could not fit a building of that size here. It will have all of the functions. There will be seating inside and everything else, very much similar to what we did in Naples. The colors will be similar as well, sort of the coffee, off-white, mocha colors that we used in Naples. There will be some awnings in front, sort of brownish, and similar signage as well.
I just have a general question. In terms of the present location, which I'm very familiar with, the number of clients, today compared to what this building will bring to Raymond, just any estimates on that?
We are hoping that it'll do better. We will close the store across the street or nearby. Obviously, it's in a gas station. Gas station has the advantage of receiving customers who are fueling, and therefore they may also get donuts and coffee. Here, it's they would have to enter the site specifically for this purpose. So we're hoping that business will be increased, but we're just guessing.
Yeah.
And Reason we are replacing the stores because the owner, although he owns 120 stores, I've been with him now for 4 years. We have not increased the number of stores. We have reduced them from about 125 to 120. He wants to improve. He wants to replace, and he's interested in owning the property and making a long-term investment and making it a larger, nicer, and so on. So, but we are hoping, that business will be increased. We are on the opposite side of the road. Maybe that'll help from where we are now, I believe. So maybe that will help as well. We're not quite sure, though. We don't have studies that tell us what will happen. We don't do traffic studies. There's no really way of knowing, except for an existing store that may be in the area.
Yeah, sure.
How do the proposed number of parking spaces relating to the 2,000 approximate square feet, how does that stack up with the number of parking spaces from, say, your 2,500 square foot?
Yeah. Usually we
facility?
like to get around 40, 42. And so it's a struggle, although this is a drive-through, probably 6% of the business is drive-through. People in a nice store really enjoy using it. We actually going in and dining. It's not just coffee, as you know. We have and donuts. We also have sandwiches, so people go there for lunch. So this is an experience that Dunkin' Donuts and we like to have, which is a restaurant, an eating restaurant type of experience. So therefore, we need parking. Also in the summer, because of the obviously quite a few people vacation here. They tend to get very, very busy, and people bring in trailers as well, which are a challenge. But the 32 spaces that we're getting is basically the maximum we can get. We've tried other options. We're getting about 20 or so. It's just not enough. But again, the rule of thumb for a restaurant this size is about 40 parking spaces, and about 12 of them at peak hours where we're transitioning staff. Usually there's a minimum of 6. We're doubling them when they're transitioning. Then we have also managers. So about 12 of those parking spaces will be taken up at peak hours by staff, by employees. So that leaves, we have, I believe, 32. That leaves about 20. So we really push to try to get as many parking spaces because we don't want people parking outside or elsewhere, obviously.
Chris, I'd like to ask you a question. I'm very familiar. I mean, I drive by the site, I don't know how many times a week. And it basically is, from beginning to end, pavement, with the addition of this. The potential waiver that we would consider in the future, I don't see it presenting problems. From your perspective,
I don't see it as a problem.
no, I don't see it as a problem. I'm speaking for myself, gratified that you are going to take the extra step in the wastewater treatment and the runoff. I think that's great. Makes you a good neighbor.
There's quite a vegetated buffer behind the site
Right.
where the parking
see
ends
that.
to that. There is a pond behind there. There's a required 75-foot setback to that, but they don't plan on getting into
To
that.
go down,
in
yeah,
any
you can
way.
see that on the site plan that they provided.
Best thing to do with a slope like that is leave it alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had just toyed with the idea of asking if you considered one-way travel through the central core of the parking lot and then just moving the driveway to the right, even though that got down the hill and more of a retaining situation. But given the number of parking spaces you really would like to have, even moving that driveway 13 feet to the right, you'd still only end up with 28 or 29 parking spaces if you made that central core one way to the left with angled parking. So maybe that's not workable.
They still have the issue of the tractor trailers.
Pardon?
They still have the issue of the tractor trailer
Right.
movement on the site as well.
Yeah.
It's about the only way they can
If
do
any
it.
of the planning board have visited the Naples location, it's very easy to maneuver as a customer in terms of the way it's laid out. In particular, the fact that a lot of that we're set back from 302. So it makes it a lot easier to deal with when you're coming in and coming out. And the traffic pattern over there in Naples is, I thought it was well done.
Gus has had I was involved in the site planning on that, and, you know, he's seen everything that you shouldn't do on stores, so that was kind of one of his first stores that we really focused hard on the traffic movement on it, and you know, that has been very successful for the movement through it, so we're trying to do the best we can to match that kind of traffic on the other sites. I don't know if you've been to the one in Wyndham, but when you drive in Wyndham, you've got to go through
I don't go
right.
there.
Yeah, so, and it's, you know, I live in
much.
Gorham, and I go to the Standish one, and it's the same thing.
Yeah.
You go through the parking, so it's a huge advantage to keep those separate from the two.
The only thing I think you should consider is the sidewalk. I do believe we do have foot traffic in that particular area, particularly since Abishan is now Paris.
Paris, that's right.
Paris, yeah.
I couldn't remember the name, so I had to call it former
Paris.
Aubuchon.
And I think you would get foot traffic up and down that area. You have, going a little bit further down, you have some offices, and there's
We think it's a good idea. We,
Mhm.
you know, it was, hadn't really thought about it until that comment came out.
Right.
We'll incorporate it into our plan.
Any other comments? I think in particular in terms of this potential of 5-foot waiver that we're talking about, because what I'm hearing from the potential applicant, I guess we could say,
No, it is the
that
applicant.
a lot of the purchase of this property depends on the security that the company would like in terms of that, because without that variance, the plan really doesn't become very workable, does it?
Nope. We don't get the stacking and queuing, we don't get the separation, the circulation, you know, trying to deal with the truck. You know, literally, when I ran the truck turning templates, I consume, you know, when we come in this way, I consume this whole area in here. Now, we will have curb and some landscaping here, because I don't need that for the truck, but this whole area through here, I do need to get them in and out. Just no other way around it with them. Unless I had them back out on 302, and I don't think that's probably not a good idea.
I have a question about the setbacks, Chris. I thought sometime in the last year or two, we amended the ordinances to allow no setback for parking on the commercial zone on the side lots.
We did, in certain instances.
If that's the case,
That's
then
in the
why would he
performance-
even need a waiver?
Because he's referring to D of the performance standards, where you're going for a 15-foot side back, it allows it to go down to 5. If the parking areas are planned on both sides of common side property line.
So he would still need the waiver?
He
then?
still needs a waiver.
Okay.
I don't have any problem with the waiver.
No, I don't either.
I don't really think it's going to be an issue.
Okay. Well, we appreciate that.
We need to do it all formally, but
Understood. But we're looking forward to coming back in front of you on a formal submittal.
Anyone have any additional questions for the applicant?
Oh, thank you for a very thorough presentation.
yeah,
Oh, certainly. Thank you.
thank you.
We'll see you again soon.
Next month.
Yeah.
Yes.
Planner communication, Jim, you want to come back and
Yeah,
communicate with us?
This application,
thank you.
I don't think there's,
They're my neighbors.
I don't know if Wayne knows anything about Nichols Road, what?
And we're still waiting for some information on Raymond Ready Care to
Right.
present the finding of facts on that.
That was a staff review.
Um,
And then Highwire, I do have a draft of the findings of fact.
But we don't have the
We
Mylar.
don't have the Mylar.
So we might as well sign them all at the same time.
So I can
It's up
hand
to
these,
you.
I can hand these out so you can at least have them.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that.
And then when they provide us with the Mylar, hopefully for the next meeting, we can sign the Mylar and the finding.
I may have to change
The previous application that Mr. Wood was working with, you were talking about him having paperwork down here sometime very shortly for us? to
Like
stop
right
by?
now.
right now.
Right now.
He's got it ready when.
Oh,
they-
okay.
So you'll be able to sign that.
Voted in.
So, yeah, so you'll be able to sign that before you
Do that
leave.
before we go.
Stepped into the conference room.
Yeah. And like I said, there's nothing else. And just for clarity on that last application, the reason that we didn't want pavement up against pavement is we wanted some delineation of
Yeah.
the lots, and we didn't want this cross-traffic possibility of going
Exactly.
through. So that's why we went from 15 and we allowed it down to 5. Unless it already existed, we weren't gonna burden them with that. But that all really came up with a lot of the redevelopment potential in the commercial district.
Right.
You know, they were
And-
handicapped if we had to go back and make them cut pavement out.
Right, and-
So that's why we allowed the waiver.
Right, and the manner in which they're gonna take care of the lot with landscaping and a retaining
Right,
wall,
it
you're
does-
not gonna have that
Correct,
cross-traffic.
correct. And that was the goal of when we did that, when we changed that ordinance back 2, 3 years ago?
2 or 3 years
2 or 3 years ago. So, in this case, it works out. Some cases it might, but, you know, I think we were more focused on the redevelopment potential of looking, the structure would stay, and then the parking lots and some of those were already encroached.
Yep.
And the ordinance had no flexibility to change that. So when they came in with a new application, when it was a redevelopment, we were forced to make them move all the parking back, and that just doesn't work in redevelopment. We might be 30 years if we do things like
Yeah, sure,
that. So that's
sure.
why we put the waivers criteria in there,
Yeah.
just for the new people who weren't here at the time.
There's just one thing I wanted to very briefly mention. We now have a full complement of 7 members on the board, and in my 12 years on the board, and I know that Greg's been around about that long too, we've almost never had 7 full members. Seems like we're always down 1 or 2, and it's nice to have a full complement. One thing I wanted to mention, I don't know if everybody has the Maine Municipal Association Planning Book Guide. It's quite weighty. It's about 450 pages. And a lot of it is procedural in nature, but it's very good reading for any of us, new members or existing members, to go back and just read through what the planning board does, what our charges are, and how we operate. And I think probably the 2 most critical thing to remember is that every applicant that comes before the planning board deserves a full, frank, and complete hearing of their application based on review of statutes and precedent, and wading through any thorny issues where we may have conflicting ordinances or things that deserve special scrutiny in the application. But any of our personal prejudices or feelings or political views, whether we're pro-business, pro-environment, we think something is the greatest thing since sliced bread, or it's just a threat to a threat to the continuation of the human species, none of that matters. Just as a planning board, we deal with the statutes and the application and the consideration of the facts of the statutes for that applicant, and they deserve that from us. So we need to leave our personal feelings and prejudices at the door. And the only other thing is that if you sit on the board long enough, at some point you will be pigeonholed by a member of the press, or you'll meet somebody at the grocery store who's your neighbor, and they'll want to start talking about an application and trying to get your feelings about it and discuss things outside the venue of the board. And there's a reason why when the hammer comes down and we have our meeting, and then the hammer comes down at the end and we go our separate ways, we have the open public meeting with the board and with everybody here in place and discussing things. But when you leave, you really shouldn't get into discussing board business with your neighbors or a reporter. Just politely tell them that you can't get into that. They're certainly free to come and observe the open meetings of the board in public, but that we are a public venue, and that's our charge. And just try not to get into discussing board business outside the board, and that we'll all be a lot better off, I think. And we motion to adjourn? We got anything else?
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Second.
I heard you started.
All in favor?
A lot of discussion, a lot of discussion.
Opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.